Hey friends, so once again, the first couple of minutes of my video recorded as mute. I don't know what's going on. I think it might be that my internet is too slow for StreamYard recording. Possibly, I'm not sure, but I'll get it figured out. Anyway, what I was saying in the beginning of this video that got cut off is I think it's important for creators who do commentary to keep a metaphorical boot on the metaphorical neck of Casey Anthony, thinking she can come back on social media and act a fool, saying that she's going to be an advocate for herself and her daughter. So I am not really one who can dive into gory details of child abuse, especially not when it leads to their actual deceasing. I can't get those images in my head too much because I can't get them out. There are a lot of movies I don't watch. There are stories I don't listen to. You know what I mean, y'all? So what I'm going to do in order to do this is I'm just going to read from the Wikipedia page a rundown of the details. That way I don't have to see any images I can't unsee. And what would be really cool if y'all would help me is if you hear me say any inaccurate details from this Wikipedia article, if you put it in the comments, preferably, and direct me to a source that hopefully doesn't have any too gruesome photos or anything on it. The next video I do, in the interest of keeping the boot on our neck, will be all of your corrections to this Wikipedia article. So that would be awesome if y'all don't mind helping me. Let's go ahead and get into the video. Casey Anthony departed from her parents' home in Orlando, Florida, where she and CAYLEE, her daughter, resided. Her father, George Anthony, later testified he saw his granddaughter, CAYLEE, leaving with Casey. Casey told her mother, Cindy, that she was walking CAYLEE to her nanny, taking CAYLEE to her nanny, whom Casey identified as Zenalda Zanny Fernandez Gonzalez. And the next day, she further informed Cindy that the three were headed to Tampa on a work trip. 30 days after Casey's departure, her car was found abandoned in Orlando and towed away. George and Cindy were notified that the car had been impounded. When George went to recover the car, he and the tow yard manager noted a strong smell coming from the trunk, which both later stated they believed to be that of human decomposition. When the trunk was open, it contained only a bag of trash. That day, Cindy reported CAYLEE missing. Cindy is CAYLEE's grandmother, George's wife, Casey Anthony's mom. Cindy called the 911 dispatchers and told them that Casey's car smelled of dead bodies and that she had not seen CAYLEE for 31 days. Cindy later retracted her statement regarding the car's odor. Now we're at the investigation. Casey told investigators that she left CAYLEE at the apartment of her nanny and that Fernandez Gonzalez had kidnapped the toddler. But when police investigated the apartment that was supposed to be the nanny, they found it had been abandoned for more than 140 days. Casey also told the police that she was working at Universal Studios. However, when investigators took her to Universal Studios on July 16th and asked her to show them her office, Casey led detectives into the building and then admitted she no longer worked there. As it turned out, she had not worked there since she took maternity leave almost 3 years earlier. Casey was subsequently arrested. On July 29th, Casey was offered a limited immunity deal in exchange for help finding CAYLEE. Prosecutors said they would not use Casey's statements to the police against her, and this offer expired September 2nd, 2008. Casey's parents appeared on NBC's Today on October 22nd, 2008, maintaining their belief that CAYLEE was alive and would be found. Remember, they both smelled the dead body. Larry Garrison, president of Silver Creek Entertainment, acted as Anthony's family spokesman until November 2008 when he resigned, citing the family's erratic behavior. On August 11th, 12th, 13th, and 2008, meter reader Roy Kronk called police about a suspicious object found in a forested area near the Anthony residence. In that first instance, he was directed by the sheriff's office to call a tip line, which he did, receiving no return call. In the second instance, he again called the sheriff's office and was eventually met by two police officers. He reported to them that he had seen what appeared to be a skull laying near a gray bag. On that occasion, an officer conducted a short search and stated he did not see anything. On December 11th, 2008, Kronk again called the police. They searched and found the remains of a child in a trash bag. Investigative teams recovered duct tape, which was hanging from hair attached to the skull and some tissue left on the skull. Over the next 4 days, more bones were found in the wooded area near the spot where the remains had initially been discovered. On December 19, 2008, medical examiner confirmed that the remains found were CAYLEE's. The death was ruled a homicide and cause of death listed as undetermined. Now we're at the arrest and trial. Following her arrest at Universal Studios, Casey was charged with giving false statements to law enforcement, child neglect, and obstruction of a criminal investigation. The judge denied bail, saying Casey had shown woeful disregard for the welfare of her child. On July 22, 2008, after a bond hearing, the judge set bail at $500,000. A month later, Casey was released from the Orange County Jail after bond was posted by Tony Padilla, nephew of California bail bondsman Leonard Padilla. Leonard said he hoped he and his nephew could help Casey find her missing daughter. However, when an angry crowd began to gather at the Anthony residence where Casey stayed while on bond, Tony decided to revoke her bond and returned her to jail. Leonard further added that Casey had not wanted to communicate with him. On October 14, 2008, Casey was indicted by a grand jury on charges of first-degree murder, aggravated child abuse, aggravated manslaughter of a child, and 4 counts of providing false information to police. She was later arrested. Judge John Jordan ordered that she be held without bond. A week later, the state dropped the child neglect charges because the neglect charges were premised on the theory that Anthony was still alive. On December 28th, Casey was arraigned and pleaded not guilty to all the charges. On April 13, 2009, prosecutors announced that they planned to seek the death penalty in the case. Let's go on to the evidence. Let's go to the opening statements. So the trial began May 24, 2011. In the opening statements, lead prosecutor described CAYLEE's disappearance day by day. Prosecutors stated that Casey used chloroform to incapacitate CAYLEE before suffocating her with duct tape, leaving the body in the trunk of the car before disposing of it. The defense, led by Baez, said that Anthony had likely accidentally drowned in the family's pool June 16, 2008, and that George had, with Casey's knowledge, covered up the drowning in order to spare his daughter a potential child neglect charge. The defense further said that Casey's seemingly unaffected behavior after CAYLEE's death was attributable to she allegedly suffered at the hands of her father and brother. Finally, the defense stated that the police investigation had been compromised by media frenzy. There are some similarities there to Gypsy Rose Blanchard because the whole premise of her getting the sweetheart deal she did was that she's been abused and something nobody ever heard before. And then there was also, I believe, something brought up by the defense about the media frenzy. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. In the trial's second week, the prosecution called various members of Casey's family to the stand. George was their first witness, and in response to their questioning, he denied sexually abusing his daughter. Both George and Casey's then boyfriend testified they did not smell anything resembling human decomposition in Casey's car when she visited them while CAYLEE was missing. But George said he did smell something similar to human decomposition when he went to pick up the car on July 15th. Cindy testified that her comment to 911 that Casey's car smelled like someone died was just a figure of speech, further noting that she had exaggerated claims on the phone in an effort to get the police to respond quickly. Why would she do that? I mean, why would she even, if she really didn't believe that the child had died, and if you've heard that 911 call, she sounded scared as hell. None of this makes any sense, and I don't understand what went on with this family. Okay, third week was devoted to forensic analysis. I'm going to kind of skip through here a little bit. The prosecution called software designer who testified that based on a program he used to recover deleted searches, FBI latent fingerprints examiner Elizabeth Fontaine said that she had observed the outline of a heart-shaped sticker on the duct tape found with Warren, though by the time she tried to photograph the outline, it was no longer visible. Fontaine said she had not found fingerprints on the tape, though she had not expected to. FBI hair analyst Sebastian Shaw testified that a hair discovered in Casey's trunk belonged to CAYLEE and displayed root banding. He said that a study he had been running and he had expedited for the trials so far had shown that banding had only occurred post-mortem. Finally, over defense objections to scientific reliability, Arpid Pass of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory reported that air sampling procedure performed in Casey's trunk indicated decomposition and chloroform. The defense noted that Vass had been unwilling to share his proprietary database and that his forensic technique had never been previously used before in a criminal case. Ashton called the defense theory of accidental drowning absurd because he said no one would make an accident look like a murder. Exactly. Baez, who Judge Perry had said he could not address the ABUSE claims given lack of evidence presented at trial, emphasized the circumstantial nature of the prosecution's case, saying the state's allegations were based on fantasy computer searches, fantasy forensics, phantom stickers, phantom stains, and no real hard evidence. Bullshit. Baez said that there was a reasonable hypothesis of innocence in light of the possibility that Anthony had drowned. Ugh. Further contending that drowning was the only explanation that made sense is a point he illustrated with a video of the Anthony's opening the home's sliding glass doors, which did not have a child safety log by herself. He criticized the prosecution for their heavy use of character evidence, saying the strategy behind that is if you hate her and you think she's a lying no good SLUT, then you start to look at the evidence in a different light. People hated her because she failed to report her daughter missing for 31 days, lied all over the place, obviously in ways that she was caught, and had the smell of a dead body in her car. That's why people hate her. That's why people believe that she's guilty. Ridiculous. Anyway, Casey Anthony is not required to present evidence to prove anything. He said the burden rests on the shoulders of my colleagues at the state attorney's office. In rebuttal, lead prosecutor said the state had backed up the claims from his opening statements with evidence. They did. She pointed to Casey's actions after CAYLEE's disappearance, saying responses to grief are as varied as the day is long, but responses to guilt are oh so predictable. What do guilty people do? They lie, they avoid, they run, they mislead, not just to their family, but to the police. They divert attention away from themselves and act like nothing is wrong. Verdict denied Baez's charge that the prosecution had based its case on emotion rather than evidence. She then ended her rebuttal saying that showing the jury a side-by-side picture of Casey partying and a tattoo she received the day before she reported CAYLEE missing. Yeah, that happened, y'all. Verdict and sentence. You know what? I don't even want to read this part because we know that what happened is she got off with it. Substantially pursuant to a little-known Florida statute requiring judges to assess and investigate prosecution cost, if requested by a state agency, Perry ruled that Casey must pay $217,000 to the state of Florida. The prosecution requested $516,000 in reimbursement, but Perry only found Casey liable for expenses incurred during the period in which CAYLEE was reported missing to when the homicide probe opened. Absolutely ridiculous. She was convicted of lying to police officers, false statements. She was sentenced to 1 year in county jail and $1,000 in fines on the 4 counts of providing false information to a law enforcement officer, maximum penalty prescribed by the law. That's all she got. Oh, and because Casey had been incarcerated since October 2008, she received more than 1,000 days time served credit and was released 10 days after the sentencing. I remember the news whenever she walked free. It was awful, y'all. Awful. Okay, she appealed her convictions. Appellate court rejected, but concluded that her false statements could only constitute 2 offenses because they've been made in 2 interviews. So 2 of the convictions were thrown out, and it was only 2 that she got. 2 instances. But the statement of her family, George and Cindy, was weird because apparently they've believed that they knew what happened, but here's what they said. While the family may never know what has happened to CAYLEE Marie Anthony, they now have closure for this chapter of their life, for the trial. They will now begin the long process of rebuilding their lives. Despite the baseless defense chosen by Casey Anthony, the family believes the jury made a fair decision based on the evidence presented, the testimony presented, and the scientific information presented, and the rules that were given to them by the Honorable Judge Perry to guide them. The family hopes they will be given time by the media to reflect on this verdict and decide the best way to move forward privately. Public response to the verdict. Many in the crowd of 500 outside the courthouse reacted in anger, chanting their disapproval, waving protest signs. People took to Facebook, Twitter, and other social media outlets. My audio cut out at the end again, friends, but I want to know what y'all think. A lot of people are reporting that Casey Anthony made some kind of contact with Gypsy Rose Blanchard. That seems wild, but a lot of things in this case have seemed really wild that I could have never expected. So I'm not ruling it out. What do y'all think? It seems really, really weird that she comes out now. There just seems to be no viable reason for it. Let me know in the comments, y'all.